Yeah, to understand what makes a country like Switzerland score highly on these well-being indicators based purely on what's in these documents.
Exactly. And, right off the bat, something just jumps out. Switzerland's overall life satisfaction score.
It's high, isn't it?
It is 7.5 out of 10. And what's really interesting is comparing that to the OECD average. That's the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development.
Right.
Their average is quite a bit lower, 6.7. That difference, well, the sources really highlight it.
It's definitely significant. And the material, it doesn't just stop at the score, does it? It digs into the specifics, the things that likely contribute to that higher satisfaction.
Mm-hmm.
Looking at the bigger picture these sources suggest, it seems like it's not just one thing, more a combination of foundational elements they point towards.
Okay, so let's unpack some of those foundations, yeah. According to the sources, First up, income.
Always a big one.
The average household net adjusted disposable income, close to 40,000 USD a year in Switzerland.
Right, and compare that to the OECD average.
Just over 30,000 USD. And net wealth. The sources show an even bigger gap there.
And that stronger financial base, as the sources suggest, it really provides a crucial foundation, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, it usually means, better access to things like quality education, healthcare, housing, which directly improves living standards for many.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
And how does that play out in work life? The sources paint a pretty strong picture for the job market, too.
They do.
Employment rate for working-age folks in Switzerland is 80%. That's well above the OECD's 66%.
Yeah, a big difference. And earnings, too.
Right. Average annual earnings, over 64,000 USD compared to about 49,000 USD OECD average.
But what's really insightful, I think, from the sources isn't just the income or the employment rate. It's also about job quality. They show a much, much lower percentage of employees working really excessive hours. Think like 0.4% in Switzerland versus 10% across the OECD.
Wow, 0.4 versus 10.
Yeah. Plus, the data suggests less expected loss of earnings if someone does become unemployed.
So it points towards not just having a job, but maybe a more secure job, better work-life balance for many.
Exactly. That's what the material seems to indicate. Security and balance.
Okay. Shifting gears slightly. Housing. The sources cover this as well.
Mm-hmm.
Now, costs might take up a bit more income in Switzerland compared to the average.
A slightly higher percentage, yeah.
But the actual living conditions metrics, they're highlighted as quite good. More rooms per person, for example.
Yeah, 1.9 rooms per person versus 1.7 average. Then things like basic facilities, indoor plumbing.
Almost universal. 99.98%, the sources say.
So the suggestion is, despite maybe higher costs, people generally experience less crowding and have, very high basic quality in their homes.
Right. Then there's health and safety. Also pretty impressive stats in these sources.
Like life expectancy.
Almost 84 years. That's a full 3 years over the OECD average. And 81% of people report being in good health.
Which is also significantly higher than average. And personal safety comes up too.
It does. Feeling safe walking alone at night, 86% in Switzerland say yes, compared to 74% OECD average.
And the homicide rate is extremely low in the data, 0.3 per 100,000 people.
Yeah, versus 2.6 average. So collectively, the data suggests, strong physical security and this feeling of safety.
Definitely. It paints a clear picture there.
Here's something I found really interesting in the sources. Civic engagement.
Ah, yes, the voting numbers.
Exactly. Official voter turnout in national elections seems quite low, around 45%. One of the lowest in the OECD, actually.
But, and this is crucial, the sources immediately add context, right? They highlight Switzerland's system of direct democracy.
Explain that a bit.
Well, it means low turnout for electing representatives doesn't necessarily mean people aren't engaged. Citizens vote directly on specific laws, on policy proposals, and the sources actually show that stakeholder engagement, like in developing regulations, that's higher than the OECD average.
So it's a different kind of participation, maybe one that makes people feel connected or like they have a say in a different way.
That seems to be what the sources imply, yeah. It challenges how we might typically measure engagement just by election turnout.
Okay, so let's try and pull this all together from the sources. We've seen high average income and wealth, a strong job market, high employment, good earnings, very few people working excessively long hours.
Right, that quality aspect.
Good housing conditions, even if costs are a bit higher. Impressive health and safety stats.
Definitely.
That unique sort of highly participatory form of civic engagement through direct democracy.
Yeah, despite the voter turnout numbers for elections.
And strong social connections mentioned too, all alongside that really high overall life satisfaction score we started with.
And what's quite fascinating, looking at all this data you've shared, is how these different pieces, the economy, jobs, living space, safety, community, how people engage civically, how they all seem to weave together.
Right.
They combine, according to this material, to contribute to that high reported quality of life, that high satisfaction score.
Absolutely. So considering this generally positive picture the sources present, and remembering the material, also mentions social inequality metrics tied to areas like income, jobs, education.
Those nuances are in there too.
How do you think the distribution of all these positives, wealth in particular, might play into the overall well-being across the whole population? That's maybe something for you, the listener, to chew on, reflecting on the details in these sources.